Hey everyone. Today I wanted to go over learning how to learn, which generally means the process of looking at your gameplay and how to find things to improve on, and then when you actually play, how to actually work on those improvements. So this sort of comes down to three or four basic ideas here. A few of these can be lumped together, but when you play the game, you're either trying your hardest and trying to rank up, um, or just playing for fun, right? Like you don't have to do this all the time, but you should have time where when you're playing, your purpose of playing is to improve. So this means when you're playing to get better, you're intentionally playing just to focus on the things on. And then you have to know how to think about your game to find the things that you want to improve on. And there's a few different areas of gameplay. Like, did you miss your shots is completely different to did you not know that someone spawned there, right? So I think it's very useful to segment the different areas of the game and then figure out like one or two in each area to work on. It helps keep mental load um, less stressed, right? Like if you're spending a lot of brain power on, or let me rephrase that, if you're spending all of your brain power on just high level stuff, like those kind of get they're pretty conflicting, at least for me, where I only have so much time I can devote to like when are people spawning, where are they spawning, what are power up times, keeping track of that sort of stuff is different than making sure your muscle memory for hitting your shots is right. So I find it a lot easier to find a couple mechanical things and a couple high level things to work on. I find I can get more practice done that way as opposed to doing a bunch in the same area. And then reviewing play is this. I want to say this the same thing. It's very similar to choosing specific issues because you have to review your play to choose your issue, right? You don't have to specifically VOD review, but VOD reviewing is very important here. So basically, those things, picking things to work on, breaking down which ones you want to work on, and then actually playing. Um, so playing with intention, again, you should find times to play where the entire purpose of playing is to get better and work on the things you want to work on. Um, I really, really, really suggest having an alt account to do this, or if Infinite has really strict social matchmaking, which I really doesn't. But the idea here is you want to be on an account where you're playing people whose skill level is the same as you on full autopilot, right? So if you just completely shut your brain off and play the game, you're not going to be as good as if you're like fully focused and trying to play your best. But you want to be in a skill bracket where if you cannot devote any brain power to playing the game properly, you should be about 50-50 win rate, right? Which is going to be below your highest rank. So it's nice to have an account playing with people who are trying their hardest, who are at about the same skill level as you, while you can actually put thought into trying to do. So it's sort of the second bullet point comes into when you pick the things you want to work on, you need to spend all of your time trying to do those things, making yourself do it because you have to force different habits, right? Like if you're making mistakes, it's because your brain just does that naturally. So you have to do something you're not used to doing, which takes a lot of brain power to um, actually think about it for once and then reprogram the way that your body wants to do things. So by doing that, you have to let all of the other processes that you do just handle themselves, right? Like if you have spawns down really well, where you know when people are spawning, you know where they spawn, you know how to control spawn rotations, you know how to block paths from spawn points to important things. If you don't have to think about those, you just focus everything on like micro positioning and whether your shot's good. Um, that helps a lot because when you're playing high level stuff, you have to keep spawn rotations forefront in your head because a lot of the stuff you do is reliant on how accurate you are with spawn predictions. Um, and when you're working on something that's not that, you need to just not think about it. I think that's about it for this part. This bottom thing is really nice to do. Acknowledge improvement mistakes during the session. So when you're thinking about something, when a situation comes up where you can implement the change, try to do it, then acknowledge whether you did or didn't. You're not going to do this 100% of the time. You can't just like decide to hit all your shots and then go to the next game and hit all your shots, right? That doesn't happen. But you have to acknowledge when you do something well and when you don't. And this helps a lot with tracking progression. Again, when you play, set time aside to actually play the game, and ideally do it in a slightly lower rank than you play in. How to choose issues. A lot of this comes from VOD reviewing, which we'll go over later. But the most blatant one is deaths from mistakes, right? Like, again, did you miss a bunch of shots? Okay, go work on your shot. One thing I'm working on a lot here is when I peek angles or challenge out from around a corner, I do it way too wide. So I'm taking deaths because I'm exposing myself more than I need to. But every time you die in a game, if you have time to think about whether the death could have been prevented, or if you know why you died and you can fix it, just take a note of what to work on. Again, VOD theater review is really important. We'll go over that later. And then when you are playing to improve, it's very, very useful to trim that down to a very specific small set of things so you can work on. Going back to playing with intention, you only have so much brain power to work on to improve with. And if you can settle it down to like, you want to work on as many things as possible while you can actually actively think about those things, you don't get all muddled together where you're like not really making progress on any of that. And then when you're playing, go through, keep doing things, but when you're comfortable, you've made an improvement, you can move on to something else. You don't have to go from like a 1 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10 in whatever you're working on in one session, right? You can go work on aiming for a week, feel like you made some improvement, and then move on to some other stuff. But it's important when you do that to think about how your improvement went and whether it's worth going back and putting more focus into it later. So as far as picking the things that you want to work on, I like to have 1 or 2 in each of these, mechanical and high level. Mechanical stuff is like, think of most of the things that come with muscle memory with a controller, like YY equipment or your aim right stick. How is your strafe? Can you do the trick jumps you have to make? And Halo 3 is a lot of stuff like YY equipment or throwing instas with Plazzies. These are 2, you don't have to be good at these things to be good at Halo 3, but they will help your game. So it's things where like, if you just don't YY your equipment at all, just spend a week and YY every equipment you throw. You'll slowly become natural and get used to it. Like instaing Plazzies is really important. It's, again, you don't need to do it, but it'll get you a lot of free kills and it'll get you out of a lot of situations. So like spending a week how to learn that's really important. But again, these are things where like they are your controller inputs to immediate things that happen in the game. Which I mean, yeah, fucking everything in the game, you use your controller and things happen. That's obvious. But like these are very specific in the moment, and you perform actions in the game that are useful. And then this stuff down here, high level positioning, is more of theory. It's sort of like, for all my American friends, it's like if you're playing football, right? High level gameplay is like drawing up plays and then designing plays to work in certain defenses. And then mechanical improvement is like, how well can you run your pattern as a receiver? But stuff with high level that's really important is map positioning. Are you in good positions? You may want to spend a lot of time outside of game understanding why positions are good. Watching pro players is really important here. You'll see them go to the same positions a lot, and if you can figure out why they're there and why it's good, I mean, first of all, just copy them, but then understand why that's important, and try to like make sure you're actually going to those positions in game. Weapon power up timings, you have to know these. This is required for high level gameplay. If you don't know this, learn them. And you're not like, again, this is something where you're not going to know it immediately. You can't just go like, oh, I now understand all timings and all maps and just do them inherently. You have to spend a few weeks where all the other stuff, positioning, spawning, all that's just thrown out, and you just make sure that you know when timings are coming up and verify you can get there and be in positions to contest them when they come up. And then again, stuff like spawn locations, and then something I'm working on right now because my spawn location is pretty good. I'm not very good about knowing when the other team is spawning when I don't kill them, right? So like if I kill 1 or 2 people on the other team, I need to know whether the other 2 people on the team are dead or if they're going to come kill me. And then I'll also know like how many people are going to spawn where I think they're going to spawn. So I would pick 1 or 2 of each of these. So like if you have 3, pick like work on your strafe, and then pick like kill feed awareness and timings, right? So like when you're playing, all of your mechanical thought is going to controlling your right stick. Some of this does come with left stick, but like working on your aim. And then outside of fights, you're keeping track of timing and watching the kill. And that should, in theory, if you're working on improving, take like all of your brain power. The last part is reviewing this. You could spend a lot of time reviewing VODs and going over every single death, every single fight you couldn't take. Like, you can break down all this stuff for hours on one video if you really wanted to. But the idea here is either while you're playing, if you have time to think about what could be improved, or if you are taking the time to VOD review, which I highly suggest you do, these are some questions to think about, right? Like, if you died, was it preventable? Did you die because you were in a bad position? Did you die because you took a bad fight? Did you die because you missed? Did you die because you peeked too wide? Did you die because you didn't know someone spawned there, right? Like, if you always have the answer to why did you die, it should almost never be, I took a 50-50 gunfight and lost, right? Like, even then, you probably shouldn't be taking that fight, right? Like, sometimes you do have to die, but I think it was the how to be productive video. I went over, like, dying is almost never the right answer. And sometimes you're going to get outplayed. That's just going to happen. But every death is usually a really good place to sit down and look at places to improve from those deaths. And sometimes it's not super obvious, right? Like down here, did the enemy have an advantage? Did you let them out of spawn? This one people don't really think about, right? But there are some deaths that happen 15 seconds after a mistake because you didn't control their spawn hard enough. Like if you guys have 3 dead on the pit, I would say Halo 3, but pit's in like every fucking game. But if you get 3 dead on pit and you don't push to their side, and then they spawn court and pick up their sniper that you didn't know was on respawn, and then they just pick up their sniper and snipe you off bridge, like, you made the mistake because you let them out of their spawn. Right? If 3 are dead and you can push to their side and you can control spawns, you can prevent them from getting something that would give them an advantage. So I'm not going to go over all of this stuff here. Most of this is stuff we just went over, but you should be reviewing it and you should be going down. And this checklist isn't perfect, but it's pretty comprehensive as far as like things you should be asking yourself for how to find ways to improve. I think that's it. Yeah. Play the game. Play the game, but play the game and do it in a way where you can actually focus on improving. And again, if you do it, I do recommend making an alt, but don't be a shithead, right? Like, don't make an alt and then just fucking throw games so you can be like, you want to be in a place where you're forced to work on the things you're working on, and if you keep making the mistake, you'll keep getting punished, right? You don't get an advantage from shitting on kids who can't hold the controller. I think I'll end it there. Hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully we get an infinite beta soon, but you know, who knows? But it seems like people actually find that channel, which is super cool. So thank everyone who's watching. I got a few random subs, which is super cool as well. So thank you guys who did that. Hopefully I'll be back more when Infinite starts coming out. I know I'll be making those, and then hopefully you guys like them. Thanks again. Bye.